Oh, Professor, I've been looking for you everywhere. Where have you been?
I'm so glad you found me. Well, it's really nice to meet you. Welcome to GP Los Angeles, or Magic Fest Los Angeles, and
Yeah.
I hope you have a good time. Are you playing in the main event?
No, I was wondering if we just...
That's what side events are for. They're so much fun. You know, here at a GP, you can do so much more than the main event, and you meet people. There's casual games to be had. I hope you have a great time. I do kind of have to go. It was really nice meeting you again.
So you don't want to grab some lunch like we talked about last week?
Lunch? Well, hey, listen. I mean, at these things, I know that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm not doing a fan meetup this time, so like I am going to just get lunch with people that I know and like already and stuff, because it could be a little awkward, but I that's really nice of you to offer, and have a great time at this GP.
So we're not practicing for the Pauper MCQ? We're not doing that either?
I'd love to get a game of Magic with you. I'm going to be doing some side events myself and the PTQ, and hey, maybe we will get paired up against each other, and then we can play a game of Magic.
The interview as well? The interview?
Oh, I'm sorry, a selfie? You want a selfie? Sure. There you go. And did you want me to sign something? No? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
perhaps the contract about the podcast, perhaps?
What?
The podcast we're on.
Yes.
Dice removal?
Right, Vince, I'm aware of the podcast that we're on. What, you're acting like I don't know you. Anyway, it was great seeing you, and have a good flight back or whatever. Bye. I'm reaching out to you, Vince, from across the ocean. There we were together. We were in the same physical location, and now we are an ocean apart, separated. Here we are, back at Dice to Removal. Ladies and gentlemen, we haven't had an episode up in several weeks because GPLA actually brought Vince and I together, as you saw in our opening skit. It was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, I loved it. LA was probably my favourite GP I've been to. I mean, I had to hang out with you. That was one of the downsides. But the upside was just meeting so many people in the community, hanging out. I got to do coverage. Don't know if you spotted that. I've got a little YouTube channel as well. I might mention that before Brian mocks me for it. But
boy, oh boy! So that's 4 seconds in. 4 seconds
I need to get it in
for the
there,
YouTube
Brian.
channel
the only
plug.
reason I do this is to plug the YouTube channel. But yeah,
I honestly think it's shameless. I honestly think plugs like that just make me scratch at this high quality T-shirt with this non copyright, not legally distinct Tarmogoyf, legally distinct from a Tarmogoyf, getting killed by a legally distinct.
Yeah, wicked. I think it was probably the best GP I've been to in terms of just exciting stuff that I got to do and people I got to meet and things. So yeah, it was wicked. Did you enjoy GPLA in the end? So
I did enjoy GPLA. There was a lot of games of Magic. I had a lot of fun. We had the Pauper PTQ, which was just a dream come true. And also just, when you're at a Magic Fest, you're playing a lot of Magic, which is what gave me the idea for this episode that we're going to do today, which is to talk about the 7, not the only 7, but 7 of the most highly annoying habits of Magic the Gathering players. And I think this is, I'm already smiling, but I want to say before we get started on this, that the purpose of this episode is not to make fun of anybody, is not to go at anybody or have a go at anybody, but rather to discuss ways in which we as Magic players can maybe look at ourselves less than looking at others with scorn, but maybe look at ourselves and recognize some of these bad habits. I'm guilty of several of them. And I'm going to admit which ones I'm guilty of and try and be better. But our rules going into this episode are that we're not going to just be sharing like situational anecdotes like, oh, number 6, one time I was playing this guy and he did this and he did this and he did this and it pissed me off. We're not doing anything like that. We're having ideas of bad habits that are more encompassing of a lot more people in the community.
My list is just like bullet points of things you did to me at GPLA. Have I misunderstood the episode?
You have misunderstood the episode. That's for next week. 7 highly annoying habits of the professor.
That'd be no. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Number 6, he never buttons the top button on his dress shirt.
He always mentions how me having a YouTube channel is weird for some reason. Always, without fail.
Wait, you have a YouTube channel? Really?
There we go again.
Wow.
So I think the point you were making
absolutely.
before I rudely interrupted you and spoke over you, which is one of your worst habits, by the way,
It
is
is,
that we're not
actually.
going to be picking fun at anyone in particular. We're not going to
Right.
use anecdotes of particular times that specific things happen to us. We're more wanting to highlight generalities. Is that a word? Generalisms? Is that a word? General things that Magic players do that we can all kind of like laugh at a little bit and say that is a thing that we all do, or a lot of us do, and things that we can improve on individually and as a community as well.
Magic the Gathering is a game where if you're doing it right, you look at your plays, you look at your actions, and you try and improve, right? You want to be a better Magic player, you have to be capable of looking at what moves you made during a game and recognizing where you can do better. And in that same sense, the purpose of this episode is not to mock or ridicule any person or group of persons, but to apply that concept to ourselves in terms of our behaviors. And so that's what we're talking about. And I think that's a really good precursor going into number 7, which is bad hygiene. This is talked about a lot. A lot of times it's spoken of in a very disparaging way. You can see a lot of jokes or angry comments on Reddit mocking people for their hygiene choices. And I think that underneath a lot of the animosity and underneath a lot of the humor going at the idea of Magic players with bad hygiene is a truth, which is that a lot of people go to Magic events, be it a GP or just Friday Night Magic, and they are not exercising basic hygiene. And they may not even know that they are a part of this group of people doing this bad habit. And I think it's a very important one to talk about, though, because there's nothing more miserable than having to be at a local game store or a GP and seated next to or across from someone who just really, really has not been practicing even basic hygiene that day or that several days.
I mean, it's frustrating as a community as well, because it's a recurring joke about Magic players that if you walk into a room, a Magic tournament, the first thing you'll notice before you even realise it's a Magic tournament, or the thing that tells you it's a Magic tournament, is supposedly the smell. I often defend Magic against my friends for that don't play Magic, and they joke this stuff to me, because they all know I make videos about Magic online, so they'll make these jokes to me. And sometimes it isn't the case, but unfortunately sometimes I have been to events where, yeah, it's less than ideal, because the rooms you play in tend to be quite small and warm, and you're packing in 32, 36 players, 40 players, all sat on benches or tables next to each other. It can get quite warm, and if your hygiene levels aren't the best, that's going to lead to some bad smells. I was apprehensive coming into this topic, by the way. Before we started the podcast, I said to Brian, can we talk about hygiene? Is this going to make some people feel bad? And that's not what I'm trying to do here.
There's definitely people who, I mean, everyone's got their own story, and it's definitely a really terrible position to be in if you are someone who, for there's a lot of reasons that maybe you might feel like you're targeted for factors you can't control. And that's all well and good. I want to talk about factors you can control. And the first one is showering. Not everybody showers every day, or some people shower in the evening before bed. And there is a huge difference between maybe you woke up today and you didn't shower yesterday, and you pull on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and run a comb through your hair, and you go out to the store, to the supermarket to buy some apples or what have you, or even run down to your local game store to pick up some cards or go over to your friend's house or whatever. And that this is not necessarily a problem, but going into, as you just described, Vince, like Friday Night Magic, where there might be 22 people packed into a warm room, and a room that's going to be warm because you got 22 bodies putting off heat, this has a habit of amplifying these aspects of body odor. And you don't usually smell your own body odor, even when it's strong, but other people do. and it is intensified by the conditions of a lot of game stores and GPs. I mean, that GP that we were at just last week was packed. How many people would you say were in that room? In the hall?
It was 2,000, right? There was 1,000
2,000 people. Even when a human being smells good, they still smell something. They smell good maybe, but they still smell. And to have 2,000 people putting off your body temperature and your odor, this is just, as I said, an amplification thing. And so what you really should do is, honestly, if you're going into Friday Night Magic, if you're going into pre-release, if you're going to a GP, regardless, try and make the effort to have showered prior to going in. And by shower, I mean like a full shower, use a bar of soap, put on a stick of deodorant, if nothing else, afterwards, and some clean clothes. And that's really a minimal amount of effort that can be done to ensure that at that point you are not putting out this bad odor to, make people around you miserable and to add to this very bad image of Magic players.
And it's a social contract in many ways as well, because this is something that doesn't necessarily affect you, because a lot of people won't realize if they've got any sort of body odor issue.
Yes.
Because it takes time for you to realise, like, even after a hard day's work or whatever, slaving away at the editing desk of a content creator, but you'll be like, oh, I probably should shower because I don't smell so great. So those things don't always crop up to you. It's a social contract with other people. And also as our game gets bigger and the whole esports boom and, we have more and more eyes and Magic becomes more and more visible, helping to get rid of the stigma that Magic players apparently don't wash and things would help. I mean, the circle joke, the joke is still going to be there. Every pre-release, Reddit's going to have the posts of please use deodorant, please shower and stuff. Like, we're not going to get rid of those things now because they are just jokes in the community that we'll probably come to that a bit later about bad jokes and things. But, try and improve the overall view of Magic if you want to, stick around in these conventions.
Well, and never even mind the view of Magic, never even mind the courtesy and the social contract to other people. Just yourself and your own self-worth and esteem, I think, can be tied in many ways to the care that you take of your body. And I want to actually say a story about this. When I was in high school, so you guys might notice I like to let my hair grow long. I'm not big on getting my hair cut. I oftentimes have not shaved in a few days, and I'm like that. I'm someone who doesn't believe, despite the suits, which are actually kind of my own form of rebellion against just everybody in the t-shirt and jeans, even though I'm wearing my t-shirt today for Dies to Removal, available at the Tolarian Community College Student Store. But I, in high school, believed that things like showering and using soap when you showered was perhaps a social construct. And that this was not, I asked myself, well, do wild animals shower? Why do we in society, man, feel like we have to, it's shame. They want you to feel ashamed of yourself if you haven't showered, man. And so I was very light on showers. I would take them maybe every other day. And when I did for a while, I was not using soap or shampoo or conditioner because I wanted to be natural. And I was like, I am free of this social construct. And one day I walked into a room where it was a meeting with my teacher and the vice principal of the school and maybe two other students for a club or some activity. And as the meeting was over, I was walking out and a hand came on my shoulder. And it was the vice principal. And she just kind of pulled me back. And she said, 1 minute. She said, I'm going to tell you something that's going to upset you probably, embarrass you, and I need to tell it to you though, which is that there is something you are doing in the course of your cleanliness that is not working. She said, I don't know if you're not showering. I don't know if you need to change soaps or use deodorant or change deodorants, but when you walk into a room, it is noticeable. There is something rank about you. And it is unpleasant, and you need to be aware because people are going to think this of you as someone who smells, and I know that you don't want that to be how people identify you or think of you, and you are probably not aware of it, so I'm going to do the embarrassing thing and let you know. And I was glad she did, because you know what I did? I started showering every day and using soap. Because no, I didn't want to stink up a room when I walked into it. And I realized, oh, well, whether wild animals shower or not, for whatever reason, we need to. And so, yeah, this has been an embarrassing sort of topic, and we're going to move on right now. But I'd like to think that Vince and I are talking about number 7, basic hygiene, in a way similar to my vice principal talking to me to say to some people, if you haven't brushed your teeth today, just brush your teeth before going into a pre-release on that day. Make sure you've brushed your teeth. You should be brushing your teeth every day, but brush your teeth. Taking a Tic Tac does not eliminate your bad breath. And if
these are minimal effort things too, right? Brushing your teeth and showering.
Minimal effort. I mean, and if you're like, well, I brushed my teeth at night before bed and maybe I forgot last night, just say, hey, I'm going down. I'm going to be 6 hours at pre-release for, I'm doing 2 pre-releases back to back. I'm going to make sure to brush my teeth that morning. I'm going to make sure to shower that morning. Sometimes at pre-release, my local game store would hold a thing called the Gauntlet, which was 6 pre-release events back to back, and they would encourage people to run the Gauntlet for exponential prizes. And a lot of stores do things like this, and people would sleep in their car. Because there's a midnight pre-release, and then there's a 10 a.m. pre-release. Midnight pre-release would be over at 4 or 5 a.m., and then it's like only 4 hours, so that they just go in the parking lot and sleep in their car. And that's fine. Maybe if you say to yourself, I'm going to run the Gauntlet, what you're going to do, though, is throw a new t-shirt a clean t-shirt in the back of your car. When you wake up after having slept for 4 hours in your car, you have added an odor to your clothing.
It should be a gauntlet of gameplay, not a gauntlet of odors, right?
Yeah. Change your shirt, have a toothbrush in there. Brush your teeth, have a stick of deodorant, put the deodorant on. It's basic hygiene. And at the end of the day, if you're doing all that and there's still some issue, then you've done enough. Like, I'm not saying like it's your total responsibility to just be the most perfect of persons, but basic hygiene really should be a priority for all of us attending a Magic event. Enough said.
I'm glad we covered that quite well. I'm glad, because I was fearful going into that.
Yeah, I definitely felt a little bit of being uncomfortable as I'm literally saying, use a bar of soap in the shower. But then again, for all my own intelligence, which I'd like to think I'm an intelligent guy, I'll admit that when I was in high school, I didn't think that soap applied to me in the shower. I thought I was being like a creature washing itself in a waterfall. I wanted to be where do the characters in Lord of the Rings don't use soap, do they? I honestly thought that. And so I didn't. But I don't want to smell like Gimli,
Yeah, exactly. So on the topic of the same memes and the same jokes coming up on Reddit every single pre-release, we're going to talk about Magic players and their tendency to overkill jokes. Now, this is a touchy one for me because my channel is basically comedy, because I'm not good enough to teach people to play better. And I get that I have a lot of recurring jokes on with my channel as well. But I'm very aware of the fact that I'm trying not to overkill some of those that we have done with certain Magic memes. So the ones that jump to mind, I guess we'll gear up towards the worst offender in my opinion, are the things like pre-releases, please don't forget to shower, Meandering Tower Shell being a spoiler for every single season of Magic. It was funny for the couple of seasons after Khans, but not so much anymore.
I love that one.
I
love that one.
Do you like that one?
I do. I actually really wish they would just stick Meandering Tower Shell, not as part of a set, just in some packs randomly. I think that would be hilarious.
I think that'd be great, because I guess that's an evolution or growth to the joke, right?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at is when the joke just stagnates, where it just shows up on Reddit. I think, if I'm correct, the main subreddit now for this has a ban on Meandering Tower Shell memes, I think.
Is that true?
Well, I think they have a ban on memes in general, but I'm pretty sure some of the subreddits have bans on Meandering Tower Shell specifically. Because it just became a thing that happened all the time. I could be wrong. Someone in the comments actually tell me which subreddits have it and which ones don't. But the main offender for me, the one that I've never really understood from the get-go, is Stormcrow.
I love Stormcrow.
I don't think it's funny. It's not. There's nothing to it. There's literally no substance to that joke. Even ironically, I struggle to enjoy it. Why do you love? Do you love Stormcrow, or do you love the Stormcrow joke?
I love the Stormcrow jokes. I think they're funny. I think what we're also getting at here, I just want to clarify, is we're talking about overkill of jokes, where it gets to a point where it dominates communication. I think we all have that one friend who loves The Simpsons or another similar show so much, and all they can do is just kind of communicate to you in Simpsons references. and it gets really irritating. And one of the things with Magic players is that we have these inside jokes, and inside jokes are really funny because you have to be like, your mom or your friend who doesn't play Magic isn't going to get this Stormcrow joke if they don't play Magic. So it's such a great feeling to be at your pre-release or whatever and make a Stormcrow joke and just say, or just say banding. I get people just coming up to me and saying, hey, you want to hear a funny joke? What's that? Banding. And it just gets to a point where, okay, right.
Like,
yeah.
They allow us to like form communities around them, or feel like we're included, and they like signifies to say, look,
and that's great.
Therefore, I know.
And that's great.
Sure.
At a certain point, though, when that's all that you're offering, or I would actually say when you start to take the jokes too seriously, then it starts to get a little out of control. And a really good example of that is referring to whatever the popular deck that is currently in a format is as something as like, people who play this are trash or garbage or a horrible person. Like, so Tron is taking over, and it's like, hey, you want to hear a joke? What? Tron players, or a joke about, I wouldn't save the life of a Tron player or something like that. And it starts to get too far. Like, and I love jokes like that. I'm a Merfolk player. I'm a Burn player. I love people making jokes about Burn.
You play the dogs that people love to hate. Right?
This isn't about like not making, and I love memes. I just posted a meme to my Twitter. I enjoy all of this stuff, but when it gets too much.
Yeah, when the conversation is hijacked or damaged by it. So, for example, you post about the most powerful cards in all of Magic, and someone will start posting pictures of Stormcrows.
Right.
Or you'll be like, what is up with the modern metagame at the moment? I can't seem to win with my favourite deck. How can anyone help me? And everyone's like, well, why aren't you playing Tron? Or
I would actually say worse. Like you might make a post or say at your local game store is, I'm really having trouble. I'm wondering if anybody has some advice with my deck. And it's like, what are you on? I'm on Tron. Oh, well, my advice would be for you to throw your deck away and go rethink your life choices.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and those things aren't helpful, and they don't.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, that's not, it's like, come on. You're getting to this point where you're taking it too much, and you're not actually conversing with someone, and the joke isn't appropriate to the conversation, and it can get a little out of hand. And I think the insider concept that you mentioned is a big part of it. I have a lot of social anxiety. I don't know how to communicate oftentimes with people, and having a good joke I love comedy. I love having a good joke. But you have to follow it up.
But it can lead to exclusion as well, though.
Yeah.
Here's a weird example from a personal perspective. Some joke came out of a misspelling of something on my Discord from my patrons on Tuesday, but I hadn't seen it because I was busy writing up and recording something.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came to my stream last night, was it Tuesday? The days don't matter. But I was streaming last night, and like 5 or 6 of them were saying this Beth thing, and I was like, I don't get it. And I felt excluded from my own Discord and patrons, going, I don't get it. So sometimes, like, those jokes can be great for building a bond and building a relationship with other people in your community, but you've got to remember, some people might not get it.
Right.
Some people might not be on Twitter regularly or on a certain Discord that you're on and stuff. So be a bit careful there as well, because people can be like... And then that'll lead them to hating the joke, even if the joke is genuinely funny in the first place, which Stormcrow isn't, by the way. I'm just gonna throw that in there. But even if the joke is genuinely funny in the first place, they might get sick of it, hearing the same joke all the time, or things they just don't get.
Right.
So don't overuse my jokes on my channel before people have gotten into it, because they might hate me already from hearing the comments between their friends and stuff.
Well, this is
it can be exclusatory as well.
This is a really good transition into number 5, which is communication. I want to say specifically during gameplay. We were just talking about communication, perhaps not during gameplay among Magic players, but number 5 is communication during gameplay, and there's several aspects to this, and I want to start with just communicate during gameplay. The most annoying habit, this for me might be on top of my list, is when I sit down to play against an opponent who just sits down, doesn't say anything to me, doesn't even I look at the pairing sheet, I sit down, they don't even say hello. They're just shuffling their deck, no comment, and we're into the game without any sort of communication. They'll drop a land, maybe they'll go like this to indicate pass the turn, although sometimes they don't even do that. That at least is communication. Making a hand gesture is at least communication, and I'm oftentimes sitting across from a silent opponent saying, are you done with your turn? I might play a spell, and they'll take their card and they'll just kind of like, it's a counter spell, and they'll just kind of wave it in my general direction. I'm like, what are you doing? What card is that?
It reeks of a lack of respect. I think you were going to talk in a moment about how it's emulating potentially like what people perceive to be professional Magic.
I think that's what it is. I think that people watch LSV playing, Reed Duke, and these guys are going like completely silent communication, going down. They know their decks. They know what's going on. Sure. And
I think they talk more at the GP and at the Pro Tour level
than we hear.
We can't hear sometimes when it's not mic'd.
Right.
Exactly. So people perceive it to be more quiet than it actually is.
Right.
And when you get the mics, when you finally get the mics and you hear like in between banter, or you hear like other professional players are courteous towards other players. Who was it recently who cliqued someone and they went to reveal their hand and they're like, oh, no, I'm cliquing me. Like, there's communication going on there that you should hear without the microphone.
Well, yeah, that's a really good example. Like just because it's usually that someone is going to cast Vendilion Click on their opponent, you're not always doing that. So you should announce what you're doing when you cast that card. One of my pet peeves is modal cards, like a Boros Charm, and maybe in that situation, what they're choosing with the Boros Charm or the Azurius Charm is so obvious, but there's lots of options on that. So I'll be playing, and they'll be like, Azurius Charm. I'll be like, okay, doing what? Like, you get a choice there. And even if only one of those is the valid choice, let me know what that choice is, because maybe there's another choice in this situation.
But it can lead to like angle shooting and unsportsmanlike conduct as well. Like the clique example, the famous thing is that if you're cliquing yourself, you can pause for a moment, let them reveal their hand, and then say "No, me."
Right.
But I know for a fact, I've seen conversations in a judge group recently where people were saying, actually, if you're doing that and it happens like more than once, especially, they're going to perceive that as unsportsmanlike conduct, which is like a game rule violation.
Right.
But beyond actual like rules and ramifications, like there's an element of respect where you communicate with your opponents. There are some players that I've played with at bigger tournaments in the UK where they just don't talk much, and it might even be from a place of social anxiety, perhaps, where they want to protect themselves, and that is fine. I get that some people will be like that, but what you've got to remember is you are going into a social area, and again, kind of like the hygiene thing, there's a bit of a contract there where you're going to treat some people with some respect that you would like from them as well. So you need to communicate. You need to communicate clearly as well, and communicating clearly is a social contract, but also part of the game, because you can get rules violations for being unclear with your board state, unclear with what they're doing, and angle shooting as well.
And in terms of respect along the lines of communication, there's another bad habit of this. We're still in miscommunication, but that is if you're sitting down and maybe you have some friends at the LGS or GP that are seated near you, and you sit down against your opponent who you don't know, and you completely ignore them but proceed to play, and then while you're playing, talk with your friends, or in between rounds. Like, it's so rude. Never mind whether or not it crosses into a line where you can call a judge.
I'm personally slightly at F&M level at least.
Yeah.
Guilty of this, and it happens at GPs and the casual side events as well. I've done it where, especially since the channel got bigger and things, people will come over and ask me how I'm doing, or tap me on the shoulder, or give me something, and I've become more and more aware that I don't want to make my opponent feel uneasy, that there's people around them that know me, or people might be stood behind them watching the game that know me.
Yeah.
So I used to be quite bad, and F&Ms are bad because you can leave people out. I used to be a regular at my F&M. I knew most of the people there, so the new player would come along, and I'd laugh and joke about something that happened last week. And again, it's like exclusion in some ways.
Right.
You've got to be very careful with chatting to people outside your game, and also don't do it at high comp RELs, and also don't talk about the game itself. Do not do that.
No. Once you're talking about the game, like, obviously, but like, I just mean something like I'm at Friday Night Magic, and I sit down, and my opponent is sitting across from me, and my opponent's friend is sitting next to me, and the two of them are just like, oh, you going out tonight? No. How about this? Remember to, and there's just talking, and I'm like, all right, pass. Lightning bolt you for 3, and it's like 17, and it's like, yeah, Fred, let's go do this, and it's very, very rude, distracting. I one time sat down across from an opponent who had started up a Commander game or something before the event and was just finishing it, and called me over and wanted to play out the Commander game as he was playing me. And I had to say after a few, like, where I was like, land, pass, and he's looking at his opponent and stuff, I had to say, you know what, man, are you playing this game or not? It's very distracting and not very fair to me, and I paid an entry fee, and this wasn't like a big event, and the guy was absolutely, and he said, oh yeah, absolutely. But I felt like a real, schmuck for having to do that, and you shouldn't be putting your opponent in that position. For the love of God, do not sit down at your LGS and on your phone play music and put that down because you want to listen to some tunes. I think it's bad putting on headphones. I don't know what the official rule is about wearing headphones while you're playing.
I mean, I'm assuming at casual RBL it's okay.
Sure.
It's
very rude,
yeah,
but it's worse. It's worse when you're then playing the music off of your phone.
I think anyone. Okay, here's a bit of a tangent here, but playing music off your phone in a public space is just wrong.
Yes.
Don't do it. Like, regardless of Magic and games being played, don't play your own music loudly in a public space. That's just not okay. Don't do that. Don't do
Yes.
that. Also, if you are going to talk to your friends because they've asked you if you're going for a beer afterwards or going to get some food or something, and you do respond to them, this is a really. I feel like I'm saying something very obvious here, so I apologise to everyone in the comments who just see this as an obvious thing, but just turn to your opponent and say, "Oh, sorry about that," and just apologise.
That makes a big difference.
Grace.
Well, I like to think of it like the
knowledge.
cone of silence or isolation comes down over you and your opponent. It's like, let the match begin. And I love talking to my opponent. In fact, I will actually offer up in terms of communication. I am guilty of chit chat during gameplay. I have such a great time.
I wonder if that's some people's pet peeves. Though,
It might be. So I'm bringing that up.
I'm very talkative as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I will laugh and I will joke and I will reference things in our game and
I'll
I
say
bet
stuff
there's
like
some
you
people on
start
this
playing
area.
and I literally go, oh God, I love the art on like you chose, to use this basic land art or this promo art. And I'll be like, oh, I love the art on that. I met Rebecca Gay one time. Unfortunately, she wasn't selling any print. And I'll be like this. I'll say like, have you come down to the shop a lot? I love to chit chat. And sometimes it's like, hey man, I'm trying to concentrate on the game, so I'm guilty of that.
It's been to detriment to my own game. I think I don't concentrate enough sometimes.
Sure, right, detriment to your own game.
But I have, here's a very short anecdote. I have personally before, when I'm playing against players who are definitely like in the tank and they're focusing very hard, but they're not communicating almost at all. The conversation we just previously had. I will purposefully communicate more to try and draw it out of them and to play my own game of, actually, you know what, I can talk, the art on this is lovely. They won't say anything, they just look at me.
Yes.
Because you get a few of the players that are doing it on purpose, the ones that are doing it to be a bit obtuse. But yeah, so maybe I should do that. Maybe it's...
So, move us into the next bad habit here while I just go ahead and let me know.
I was gonna flip them around, but we'll go to this one. Okay. So, card flicking. It is the oldest running joke in Magic, other than perhaps Stormcrow, the oldest bad habit of Magic. There are Magic cards in the unsets that explicitly reference this thing. You flick them like that, drive the cards to hand, you flick them around in your hand. But I am guilty of this. I've got some cards now. I am guilty of like. Can you hear that on the mic?
Yeah. Oh, I can hear that on the mic.
Cards. Like when I'm like drafting, I will flip the cards around. I personally feel, so I'm going to defend it a little bit, then we'll talk about why it's annoying. I personally feel like it allows me to concentrate, it gives me something to do, the sound is really satisfying, right?
No, it's not really satisfying, it's irritating. And here...
Okay, do you snap cards down when you play EDH?
I don't make noise, no, I don't make noise. I'm respectful of my opponents, Vince. I don't make noise.
It's not disrespect, I want to snap my cards down.
Well...
Snap down.
The issue with flicking is that it literally is one of those things, too, that people have spread this idea that by doing it, you are distracting your opponent, and this is something you want to do to improve your chances of winning. And if that's what you need to do to win, I mean, reevaluate your life choices.
So I've seen this before. I've seen people saying that this is designed to tilt people. I think I saw it on like a forum.
It tilts me. It tilts me. I can't stand it.
But if it was designed to tilt people, how come the majority of Magic players do it? Are you just
No, because what you want to do... Now listen, if you want to talk to me about I draw a card and I want to keep my opponent from noticing that, like, I've been holding this dead card or something like that, watch this. I can move the order of cards around without you knowing about it. Just
That's
fine.
a legitimate thing to do. You should do that because then it helps to not distract, but it helps to not show focus on a particular card in your hand.
Right.
It's about removing some
But
tells from
literally, like when you're going in and you're doing your Brian Kibler impression it's just it's not cool. it's irritating, and it's not really giving you an
think it
advantage
is
in
cool.
gameplay.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you literally nominated this topic as annoying habit.
Yes, I know it, and I know people moan about it.
All right, stop doing it. You're annoying me already. You are annoying me already. Put the cards down. It's. I don't care what they are. It's freaking annoying, dude.
But I think I know a lot of people who complain about it who actually do it anyway. Like, I think there are people out there that complain this is a thing that Magic players shouldn't do, and do it anyway.
Right.
Do you not do any sort of hand shuffling at all?
No, I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe. Here's the thing. I don't believe my opponent is actually paying attention to whether or not I've played this card that I drew 2 turns ago or not. I don't believe that they have that level of concentration that if I've got 4 cards in hand, they're like, ooh, that card right there. He's had that for 3 turns. You know what I do is I kind of go like this. And this, and it's like, you don't know what order. I think there's far too much fear put in this idea that I'm giving away some kind of information based on them knowing whether or not I played the card I just drew or not. I don't care. I draw the. I'm looking.
Arts at all times.
I don't give a damn if they've got a creature that I need to remove and it's been out for 2 turns, and then I draw a card and I'm like, oh, it's Doomblade, and I go, I remove it. And they're like, "Oh, good thing you drew it." I'm like, "Yeah, good thing I drew it." Like if I take
Actually,
the
you
Doomblade,
do that on purpose because you want them to know the top deck.
Yeah.
Is the removal spell. That tilts them more than the flicking, Brian.
I don't know.
I see your game there. I see your game.
I think that again, being aware of your opponent and not actually looking to cause them misery is the thing. It has nothing to do with changing card order. It has nothing to do with keeping information private.
What about
Those
the
are
fact that
good
I find
things.
it satisfying and helpful in terms of construct?
Sure.
When I'm thinking, I flick the bottom of my cards a little bit as well sometimes.
Okay, but like, let me ask you this then. Let's say, like, sure, I understand that. Like, you know what I do sometimes is I shake my leg. Is I often have a nervous
I'm doing
leg.
that right now.
Yeah.
I need to stop doing
I
this.
do that a lot. I've had sometimes people say to me, do you feel an earthquake? You know, because I'm literally, I might be shaking my right leg up and down a lot. I've got that.
I borderline damaged some content that I made. I'd filmed Paper Legacy with my friend John, and during the footage, the camera was shaking. I had to try and stabilize it because my right leg was shaking enough near the tripod.
Sure.
So I'm trying to get out of that habit, but I do that too.
So, but I don't think that if like, let's say that what I wanted to do was, hey, this is me burning energy, dude. Would you say it's okay? Would you say it's okay for me to sit down and up and M?
There is a line, Brian.
Where's the line? Right? I think the line is you're making noise. You're making repetitive noise.
No, card flicking is on one side of that line. Playing the bongos is on the other side of that line.
What about I'm just sitting here?
What, you turn into like a jazz musician?
I'm the son of a jazz musician, so I got a little bit of it in me. But
no,
yeah.
there is a line, and I think like visibly like making music with the stuff around you.
But that's what you're doing with the cards.
It's a little bit. No, it's a little bit of card.
Well, then thank you so much. I just really want to thank you, Vince, for nominating a topic for annoying habits of Magic players that you then spent the entire time refuting and saying is okay.
No,
great
I'm not saying it's
job.
Not annoying, but it's definitely, we would be disingenuous not to include it on this list because people always mention it as an annoying habit. But I believe Magic players are hypocrites a lot of the time. We do it anyway.
Great.
I've got another one I want to add into here that I just thought of that I think is quite interesting. Is it annoying habits for some players when players play white bordered lands or mismatching art?
I'd say it's an annoying habit for you to
tilted.
get upset about your opponent's artwork. I really find that stuff irritating as hell. Like if I want to play, I played my first Magic set was revised, which was white border, and I think of the revised basic lands, including the white border, as being very nostalgic for me. And if I want to have a deck where I've got the pink Mark Poole Island with a white border because it reminds me of high school, shut up. Nobody asked you then. If you don't like it, nobody asked you. And this idea of like, there's magic perfection. The idea of perfection. This is the, like that's baloney. Play what you love and be happy. And I actually really like that Autumn one with that mismatched island. I want to start doing that with all my decks because I am so sick of the elitism and the snobbery of this idea. This is why I wear a suit and tie is because I hate elitism and snobbery. And it's like, oh no, you want to wear a t-shirt and jeans. Screw that. I hate conformity. And I hate the idea of conforming to other people's expectations of how I should look or what have you. And so
I agree.
if it makes me happy,
that
then it makes me happy.
that is an aesthetic choice in itself. Like people always talk about like, oh, but it's visually satisfying to have the same arts. Sometimes, especially depending on the deck I'm playing, when I'm playing Nick Fit in Legacy, I will purposely play horribly mismatching lands because it just feels on theme and it feels like the aesthetic of the deck should be like.
What if I want
So
all
it is
the
a
different
conscious
arts?
choice.
What if I want all the different arts
Yeah,
of
exactly.
Island
I have
from
mismatching
Lorwyn?
files.
Yeah.
I have mismatching files on Modo, and I had someone comment the other day saying, "You're sponsored now, Vince. Why won't you match them?" Because that is how I started playing with Vile. And
Yeah.
I won't change it for the world.
Well, and whatever. What if I want to have like different like lands by the same artist, but they're from different sets, and I just happen to like this artist's lands. I want to play as many different art
you wouldn't
styles
fill an
of
art
them.
gallery
Yeah.
with 5 versions of the same art piece, would you?
That's a
So
really
why would
that's
you
a
do that
really
with your
great point.
basics? This is one that Brian added to the list, and I didn't quite get until we talked about it a bit more. It's the idea of coming to an event unprepared to present, or even play Magic to an extent. The first example of this is when you've got a deck that you know is going to produce a load of tokens,
Right.
and differing tokens too, and you just don't bring enough. Your deck makes clues, it makes bees, it makes beasts, and it makes humans, and you're just there with like just a handful of dice and some turned over magic cards at best. So it's the idea that you are rocking up and you haven't took the time and effort just to get the right things to present the right board state.
There's a huge difference between you're in draft and you draft a card that makes 3 goblin tokens and you didn't have 3 goblin tokens.
Yes.
And so you're using, some dice. That's fine. But if you're coming into a standard or modern event and your deck makes, first of all, I'd say makes just any type of tokens, you should have those tokens in the deck, but especially if your deck makes 1/1 soldier tokens, 1/1 flying bird tokens, and 2/2, centaur tokens or whatever, that is definitely something where you have to get the tokens, you have to get enough of them and keep them with you in the same way that you would keep all the cards of your deck together.
So how do you feel about... So I don't necessarily have the exact tokens, but I have things that are visibly distinct. So I often have like Japanese Pokemon cards, for example. I've got like a Pikachu and I've got some golems. And the Pikachu will be a germ and the golems can be golems, for example, in D&T. Is that okay in your books or would that bug you?
It's pushing it a little bit. So here's what I say. I think that, and people who have like maybe you have a deck that makes goblin tokens. That's all it does is it makes goblin tokens and it makes a buttload of goblin tokens. So what did you do? You got a whole bunch of those Chessex D6s, and you put out the Chessex D6s. I am okay with this as long as it doesn't also make other tokens that you're then using the dice to represent.
I
That
would
gets
like to
very
interject
confusing.
there. I think
Yes.
dice for tokens is frustrating.
Tough to know when it's tapped, isn't it? It's tough to know when
You don't
creatures
know
are
when they're
tapped or
you don't know
summoning
when they're
sick.
untapped. And also, if anything makes counters...
Right.
If you've got like a chalice with a counter on it, or heaven forbid something like a containment priest or something that names a number where you don't actually have the dice on it, it's got to be to the side or anything like that, then dice just becomes a mess. So I believe you need to have something that is card shaped and distinct
Right.
from other tokens on the field. So
Especially, yeah. And it gets really hard. It's like, okay, I've got 6/1/1 goblins, and I've had an opponent take a D6 and turn it to 6. And they're like, this is 6/1/1 goblins. I attack you with 3 of them. And then it's like, well, what the F, dude? Come on. It gets a little, and that's not even as bad as someone digging around and they've got a ketchup packet, a penny, and just
the only
get
only
tokens.
time I will allow a dice, personally,
Right.
is Storm. So if they're going to empty the Warrens for like 18 goblins, and they put a D20 or a life countdown on 18, I'm like, okay, because we're either going to kill those goblins and win, or they're going to kill me and I'm going to die. It's not going to matter in a couple of turns. That's the only time I'll let it slide. Otherwise, I believe firmly you need something to represent creatures that tap and untap, or at least have one under each
If
of the dice.
you want to get RK Post tokens or Steve Argyle tokens or Pokemon cards or something like that, that's
Inkling
okay
Customs.
enough if each one's different and it can represent the creature and I can keep it in my head. But you need to communicate board state clearly, and this same concept goes for things such as you need to have a means of keeping track of your life. And I believe that at this point, if you're
yes.
playing even in Friday Night Magic, you need to have a life pad. I really don't like people who sit down with pennies, nickels, and dimes. That is really irritating. I don't know if anybody in the UK does this with currency, but I hate people who sit down. Well, so people sit down with like pennies, nickels, and dimes, and they use it as a means of keeping track of the life total, and it's really irritating.
I don't even know what a nickel
unclear.
is. And I was in the States for 2 weeks, and I still don't know
Wow.
what a nickel is. Is that 5? Was dime? Dime is 5.
I guess no, a dime is not 5. This explains why when I asked you if you wanted to learn about U.S. currency, I thought it was so harsh of you to tell me you didn't give a damn, but what you were trying to say is you didn't give a dime.
Yes, exactly.
No, a dime is 10. A dime is 10. 10 cents.
Why not just call it 10p or 10 pence or 10 cents?
10p?
Why not call it... Yes, well, we have pence, you have cents, so just call it the number.
It's a dime. Do you have a coin? Do you have a coin that represents 10p?
Yeah, it's called a 10 pence piece.
Oh, well, we call it a dime, and we call a nickel
got 1 pence,
for 5
2
cents.
pence, 5 pence, 10 pence,
right.
20 pence.
Anyway, the point is when you go in to play Magic, be prepared to play Magic. Know your deck. If you've got a damn deck that makes tokens, get those tokens with you in the deck. Bring it all together. Have a life pad, have a pen, anything else that you need for playing that game. Be prepared to play Magic. And I'm guilty of this sometimes myself too, especially with the tokens, and I will make a better effort to have the tokens I need, so you should as well.
I think tokens as well. Here's another like sort of like extra. Oh well, 2 things I want to add to that. Firstly, go back to the life total thing. Just as a tip to new starters or people who are relatively fresh to Magic who are watching this and probably terrified by the elitist content creators telling them what they can and can't do at events. But having a life tracked on a pad over dice is much better. So if there's a discrepancy between the two of you, you can talk through the changes and sort of see what's going on. Also, if there's a discrepancy and your opponent's recording on paper and you're recording on dice and a judge is called, the judge is going to side with the paper because they can see the progress. So that's just like a tip there.
Also, all it takes is just one hand lightly brushing over those spin downs.
I love having 4d6s on 5 each to represent my life move up and down. I enjoy it as a tactile experience, but it's just awful for keeping track because one knock at the table, one jolted leg of my shaking leg, and it's gone.
Right.
But tokens are the place that you can customize. I've been talking about this custom tokens I'm holding on to. They're the place that I feel that you can, again, add sort of your own mark on the game. So I play, like I said, with my Japanese foil Mario Pikachu tokens in Legacy and things like that to represent germs and things. I think it's a good place to... Oh, you were yawning. I thought you were just putting a face that you hated the idea of these Japanese foil Pikachus. But I think it's a place that you can customize your game a bit more. And I think that's something that's really fun about Magic. I like the idea of having playmats and sleeves and custom tokens and altars and sign cards and stuff. So revel in the fact. Get yourself some nice Arcade Post tokens.
Absolutely.
It's a cool part of the game.
Okay. So we're into the big 2 here. These are now our top 2 annoying habits of Magic the Gathering players. And coming in at number 2 is being a bad winner.
Oh,
what do we mean by being a bad winner, Vince?
So it's when you have won. You might even see that your opponent is perhaps even a little bit distressed at losing because the game mattered for some reason, top 8s and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And you just are not a gracious winner. The worst cases are the most extremes that you don't really see very often, like people who are gloating and boastful, or make some off-the-cuff comment like, well, of course I was going to win, or whatever. Those people do exist, but they're a bit rarer. The most common thing I find is people that make a comment that they think is helpful. So I call this the, and I had all these moments. Mm-hmm. So you've lost a game, they had a removal spell for your last creature, and you're like, that's a shame you had the removal. And you scoop it up, and you might look a bit annoyed. And I can be a bad loser, which we'll come to in a moment. But, and then they go, it doesn't matter anyway, I had all these, and they've got like 3 more Doomblades in hand. And you're just like, well, that's not making me feel any better.
Right.
I mean, from their perspective, they might even be trying to help, but it doesn't help. Sometimes you probably have to leave people to just, gather themselves. Because Magic, when you lose, sometimes it can be real bad beats.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what I think of bad winners, is the ones that they're trying to help, they've got all the cards in hand, or they just mention, the matchup's bad for you anyway. I'm like, sure, but you still try and win, right?
And they don't, that's even putting it politely, like, well, that's a tough matchup. Like, I've had, like, maybe I'm on...
Oh, your deck isn't very good. That sort of comment, right?
Well, yeah, sure. Okay, I'm on Merfolk, and you're playing Dredge, which we need to do. And you beat me, and you might say something. I've actually had people make comments similar to this, not just with Merfolk, but they might be talking of the matchup, and they might say something along the lines of like, "Oh, well, Merfolk's never going to beat Dredge," And that's just kind of, maybe you're meaning to say, hey, it wasn't like you were playing bad, it's a bad matchup. But what you're really saying is like, you would never be able to win. And that's not true. And it doesn't feel good. How can you be a gracious winner? What's the right thing to do? So I just beat you at a game. How should I behave, Vince? What should I do to you?
I think you need to be just very much aware of your opponent and try and read the room. So, for example, one of the things that I love to do after winning or losing sometimes is discuss what's happened and how the Magic has went. Because, as we said at the beginning of the podcast, this episode, you said Magic's about learning from the experience, right?
Right.
But sometimes, if your opponent has lost and they look visibly tilted,
Right.
asking them how they feel about the matchup or what decisions you did wrong or they did wrong,
Leave
is
them
not
alone.
the correct thing to do. Exactly. So it's about reading your opponent, and some people might struggle with that genuinely. So
Yeah.
we understand that some people may not have that ability or those skills to do that. We're just saying perhaps be aware of that. And perhaps sometimes just give them some space and allow them, if they're the loser, allow them to come forward with questions and discussions.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, don't offer like to tell them what they did wrong or what they could have done better, and that's good stuff. I like to hear that, and I might ask that, especially if I'm on a new deck. Like, let's say I put together a deck I'm not too familiar with, and I'm down at my LGS where I might know the opponent, and at least casually, and I might, when I'm done, maybe I know this opponent is a big time Legacy player, and so I might say, oh wow, do you think I did any misplays? I might say, do you think I did any misplays? Or what I often do is I take out what I sideboarded. And I say, this is what I sideboarded in, but I volunteer it. And I say, this is what I sideboarded in against you. Do you think that was a good choice? So I am initiating that as the loser. As a winner, what I do is I try and be gracious. I might say, thank you for the game. Good luck on your next match. And beyond that, I need to let the loser dictate if this is going to be a thank you and they need to walk away for a minute because they're upset, or they don't want to talk about it, they're feeling upset, or they do. I lose and I want to talk. I actually feel more comfortable losing than winning. I'm more used to losing. I feel awkward when I win. I feel like, ooh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. You know,
like I said earlier, the whole "this is a bad matchup" thing. I guess I think I phrased that incorrectly, because sometimes that can be quite a good consolidation. I think it's whether or not it's right at that point in time. Because if someone's just lost and they're feeling real bad, some things aren't going to help. So again, read the room. And sometimes being like, do you want to talk about it? Like, yeah, but it's a bad matchup, and they might go, yeah. And then you get the dialogue. It's all about just trying to read the signs and going from there, I guess. That's not the most helpful answer, but I definitely think it's the correct one.
And that brings us into the number one most annoying habit of Magic the Gathering players. And I'm going to say this is more annoying and more of a bad habit than being a bad winner. And I'm going to say it's being a bad loser. I think that out of everything on this list, being a bad loser is probably the worst habit you can have as a Magic the Gathering player. It is no fun. It really kills the game for a lot of people. And it's something that it's okay to be upset after a game. A lot of people have issues with going on tilt or having an emotional response. Maybe it was like you needed to qualify for a top 8. Maybe it was just that you feel like you're no good and you're overwhelmed with feelings of failure and anger at yourself. And that's all well and good, but you don't need to take it out on your opponent, who is just there to play Magic and is not necessarily someone who should be made to feel bad just because you lost. And so what are some of the habits you would say of being a bad loser, Vince?
I think it's the blame game. Like a lot of Magic players. So there's two things I want to say about this. The first thing is the blame game. So people will often look for reasons to why they lost, and sometimes that's the correct thing to do. You want to find the points in the decision tree that you made mistakes. But sometimes, and I can be quite prone to this, is just writing it off to bad luck, bad top decks and stuff. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes you can disconnect from the loss and be like, well, there's not a lot I could do, that's fine. But sometimes you dwell on those things. We're like, oh, Magic's a game of variance. Oh, maybe I should give it up. Is it ever going to cut me a break? Those sort of things. So I guess it comes from your own mental state and how you deal with those the bad beats that variance will bring to you. Because Magic is a game of variance. And that brings me to my second point, where I think because it's a competitive game, and this depends upon what level of Magic you're at. If you're at kitchen table Magic, it might be very different, but towards the competitive side of things, I think people put a lot of their own self-worth on their winning, and
Right.
Magic is really, really hard. It's an infinitely complex game. It's like chess, but with the variants of poker with 16,000 more pieces than chess. It's so complicated. You're not going to master every deck and every combination. But on top of that, if your enjoyment of Magic is solely based upon the winning element of Magic, then you're going to be disappointed, because even the best players only win marginally over 50% of the time, 60% of the time. LSV, who Luis Scott Vargas is probably one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player of Magic in the world, and he's still mulled to 4 and lost in the finals of a Pro Tour.
Even the pros scrub out.
Yeah.
Even the pros scrub out. So if you're going to go and say, well, it's unacceptable for me to lose a game of Magic, I can't handle that I've lost a game of Magic, and then you are also going to say, well, LSV scrubs out at events and loses Magic, then what, are you better than LSV? I mean, LSV, when he loses, do you know what he does? Is he asks himself what he could have done better, and if it was purely variance, then he doesn't blame himself. And that's what we want to try and adopt. But I'll tell you a story. One time I was playing against one of the best players at my local game store, and this is when I was still new or returning to the game, and I 2-0'd him with a draft deck. And I was so happy because I was really had been struggling to get better, and I'd been trying to get better. And there I just 2-0'd one of the best players at our store, and I said,
boss.
Right. And I said, good game. And you know what he said? Well, it wasn't a very, and he said, like, he goes, wasn't a very good game for me. Just sat there and got stomped. And so what I said, was I said, oh yeah, that's must not be fun for me. I just, I really almost never win at draft, and I've been working really hard to, get better, and I was really excited to come down to pre-release, saved up for it, and came in here and got to go up against a really cool player like yourself, and I won, so I was proud of myself. But yeah, and then I was a little passive aggressive, and then he was just like, yeah, good game, but don't take away someone else's thunder like that.
Oh, yeah.
Don't sit there and when you do get 2-0'd, say, well, whatever. Would be nice if I could draw a land, huh? Then I could actually maybe beat you. Must be nice to have the luck of the gods. Must be nice to top deck like that. How's it feel to not get mana screwed? And it's like, that's not my fault. Like, what's your goal at this point? To make me feel bad? I mean,
yeah. But that's the defense mechanism, though, is to make you feel bad, right? And the thing is, I never consciously try to make my opponent feel bad or belittle, but sometimes I can have that tilt on the variant side of things, and I have to take some time, at least, if I have to mention to be like, Vince, don't forget, this is Magic, and the things I've just said. So even I can be prone sometimes, even though this is the worst one on our list, to being like, not a sore loser, perhaps, but being a bit of a miserable toe rag. So my point I'm making there is that we can all improve. We can all improve in some way, which is kind of the whole point of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure one of these 7 things probably applies to someone watching this podcast, right? They're going to be the guy in the group chat who always sends the Stormcrow memes, or they're going to be the guy who is a sore loser.
Right.
I definitely apply to 1 or 2 of these things. And
or you're going to be the guy that maybe needs to shower before an event. You can react to some of these bad habits that we've spoken about defensively and aggressively and dig your heels in, or you can do what a Magic player should do, which is look at yourself, look at your actions, and ask yourself if there's a way you can be better. And I think that you're absolutely right. Out of these 7 things we discussed, I would be shocked if there's anybody listening who all 7 do not apply to. And if so, awesome. But at least one of these things has to apply to you, even if it's just that you're not bringing tokens down to the event. Try and, just as you would in a game of Magic, look at what you're doing and how you can improve. And you don't need to take it personally. And there's reasons for everything. It sucks to lose. Vince is saying he can, go on tilt at losing sometimes, but there's no need to take another person down with you on that. That's very unfair to them. Yeah, somebody who's paid for an event is out there to have fun, is maybe proud of themselves, and as they should be, for what just happened. And you don't need to go and rain on their parade. If you are feeling emotionally affected by it, take a minute. I'd say, here's what I'm going to offer in closing, what I think you should do when you lose, and then you tell me what you think you should do when you lose if you think it's different. When I lose, I always offer good game. Right away, too. Because so you've got me dead on board, and I go, hey, good game. I'm a handshaker. I do like to say, hey, good game. I don't offer a handshake if I won. I will always accept it if I won. But if I'm a loser, I always say, hey, good game. I say, good luck on your next match. And if I don't have anything to say, sometimes maybe my opponent was annoying me. I even do that if they were pissing me off with their behavior, like miscommunication. I say that, then I get up and I leave. If I don't have anything else to say, I get up and I leave. Or I sit and chat and make a new friend. But that's what I do when I lose. What do you think a loser should do?
No, I think that's ideal, really. Like, I think I'm very similar, and I think that's probably the ideal way to be. I think even if you're not happy how the game went, and you're like, well, you generally do believe that the game went badly your way because of the variance and things, you can still say, like good luck with your next round, nice to meet you. You can still present pleasantries to another fellow Magic player, unless they were sat there with their headphones in, didn't bring any tokens, didn't have a pen with them, and they smelt like a garden shed. Then in which case maybe you didn't enjoy meeting them. But even then, sometimes just offer the civility anyway to make the community a nicer place.
And if you do encounter anybody behaving badly, I do like to give the benefit of the doubt. I like to say, you know what? Maybe this dude or dudette had a bad day. Maybe this person has been having a bad week. Maybe they've just had something bad happen in their life, and that's why they wanted to put the headphones on. I am going to try not to obsess over it. I'm not going to go after them and attack them. This is not about going after someone else and saying how they should be better. It's about looking in the mirror and asking if you can be better. And if all of us are willing to look in the mirror and ask how we can be better, even in little ways, like bringing tokens for our deck that makes tokens, I think bit by bit we will make this not only a better game, but a little bit of a better world. And so with that, we conclude another episode of Dies to Removal. Vince, I hear you.
Next week we can do the top 7 things that the professor does that annoys Vince.
Right. Such as saying, I hear you just started a YouTube channel. Where is it and how can we find you?
That's a great idea for me to promote that. It's youtube.com/Pleasant Kenobi. I'm also at twitch.tv/Pleasant Kenobi. I stream 2 to 3 times a week, and I make videos like, 3 or 4 times a week. I put a big gameplay video each week, which is the one I'm normally proud of, where I play Modern, Legacy, Commander, sometimes Standard Limited.
We need to schedule the Merfolk versus Dredge match.
We do.
We got to do that, so stay tuned.
Cleveland and LA that asked about that, Brian.
Let's do it in the next week. Find a time and tell me. I'm pretty wide open. All right, well, thank you all for joining us for another Dice to Removal, and I shall see you in fewer than 4 weeks next time.